Hi everybody and welcome to the Exiled Yellow Belly, where today I'm doing something a little extra and a bit different. Now if you follow the channel, you by now know who LIN is. She's my friend and also a sensitive who appears on the channel if I'm doing anything ghostly. Now LIN feels mostly rather than hears and sees things that she believes are attached to the spirit world, or has a feeling if somewhere has a dark or light presence about it. But she has been known to see things on some occasions that may be paranormal. Now I'm a skeptic, but I'm open-minded. But one thing I do know about LIN is that she doesn't lie. So how did she first realise that she was sensitive? And what are the stories she has had since then? I thought it would be fun to find out. So I asked her to tell me. And this is the result. So it's over to you, LIN, with part 1 of LIN's Ghostly Tales of a Sensitive. Now I hope you enjoy it. And please take it away, LIN.
I think that I first felt something, although probably at the time didn't even realise necessarily what it was, when I was about 3, and in the bedroom where I slept alone, I knew that in the corner, very frequently, like I would say most nights, there was something in the corner. I didn't ever see a shape, I just knew it was dark and shadowy. It was in a corner of a bay window, and even now, all these years later, probably sort of 68 years later, it was so vivid in my memory that I could describe the pattern and the colours of those curtains to you. And I knew that it was something that was scary, although at that age I didn't know what it was. I'd always been a little bit afraid of the dark, and used to have the landing light on and the bedroom door left open for me until my parents went to bed. But then it became very scary when it was dark and I felt I couldn't see anything in the room. I think a few months after I first realised that was when my mum had my sister, and she slept in the room in a cot with me. I felt a little bit better about it then, but I was too young, I think, to understand much about it. I just knew that it was very scary, scary enough to make me come out in a sweat and my heart beat faster. That's my first real memory. The next time that I really was aware of feeling anything untoward, then shall we say, and creepy in a house, was in a 2-bedroom terrace house that belonged to my aunt. And I could feel something quite sinister there. I was, as I say, probably 6 or 7 years of age, and I knew that it was something not very nice. It occurred in the cupboard under the stairs and on the stairs in the 2 bedrooms upstairs. This feeling was also shared by my sister, who never has real feelings for anything of a spiritual or paranormal nature, and also a friend who was aged about 18 when she lived there as a lodger for I think about a year, also felt the same sort of thing, not ever seeing anything in the house, but getting a very unpleasant feeling about the house. My next memory of feeling sort of quite scared, actually, was my dad had a cafe in Castle Street in Luton, and at the back of the cafe was a garden. It was quite a nice garden with a rockery, but there was a very sinister feeling at that garden by that rockery. And I had a friend who lived next door over a florist. Her dad owned the florist next door, and in those rooms upstairs it was very, very creepy, very dark. I would say sinister. It was a really unpleasant, scary feeling up there. I didn't ever see anything up there. I just felt it was a very damp and dark feeling. So I think that quite a few years went by before I really remember feeling anything else, and it was slightly different. I was probably 15, 16 at the time, working with several other girls in Luton, and one of the girls had been talking about ghosts and spirit of the glass and Ouija boards. I'd never seen a Ouija board, but I had heard about them and was always interested in the subject. And this girl said we would have a bit of a spiritual evening and invited us all round to her house, where we had coffee, and she was talking about something called Spirit of the Glass, which was a poor man's Ouija board, in effect. So she had written all the letters of the alphabet, numbers 1 to 10, and the words yes and no on pieces of paper that she put in a circle on a round table, and there was a glass in the middle. I think there were 5 of us girls there, and I say girls and young women, and never having been present at anything like that before, I was very interested. And it started off, and I could see this glass. We all had to put our finger very lightly on the glass, and our hostess was asking questions of a spirit, and the glass was moving round. I was absolutely fascinated. I remember being so fascinated by it, how the glass was moving. I don't remember at that session what we were told particularly, but it did whet my appetite. And when I got home, I was telling my sister about it, who, though she never felt things in the same way that I did, she was very interested and wanted us to have a go at home. I knew that you needed more than 2 people, so the following evening I invited a friend to come round to our house. My mum had a perfectly the perfect coffee table to do this Spirit of the Glass. It was a walnut, highly polished coffee table, low. We sat on the floor, 3 of us. I'd written out the numbers and the letters and the words yes and no, got a glass, and at first nothing really happened. But after 5 or 10 minutes, the glass did start to move round, and I was astonished that it was actually working, to be honest, at the time, but totally captivated by it. We started asking questions, and I can remember very distinctly at the time my sister having a new boyfriend that my only knowledge of him was that his name was Bob Chapman, and he lived in Stopsley just outside Luton, and I'd seen him probably a couple of times a week just dropping my sister off in the car outside. Didn't know much about him. He'd only been seeing her for a couple of weeks. She was very curious to know things about him, and when it was her turn to ask a question, she asked of the glass, "Do you know where Bob Chapman lives?" And very clearly, without faltering, the glass spelt out, "In a little road unknown to me." Well, that didn't really tell us anything. I think my sister was very disappointed, but we thought maybe there was a very small road in Stopsley that he could possibly live at, but we didn't know how to find out if this was accurate or not. My friend then said, "Oh, my father has, for his work, a Kelly's street directory of Luton and surrounding districts at home. When I go home, I'm going to have a look to see if I can find anything that might fit with that." After about 15 minutes after she'd gone home, I got a phone call from my friend, who very excitedly said to me, "Oh, this is very spooky, Lynn, but Bob Chapman lives at 49 Littlefield Road." We were gobsmacked, really, that this could be so accurate, and I suppose it encouraged us to carry on and want to find out more. So the next time that my sister saw Bob Chapman, she told him about this, and she said, "Is that right that you live at 49 Littlefield Road?" And he said, "Yes, how did you know?" So she explained it all to him. He said, "Well, I want to come round and see this glass for myself." So my sister said, "Would you, mind doing it again?" I said, "No." I was, enthralled that it actually worked. So Bob Chapman came round, and the glass was once again going really well, whizzing around, and he said he'd like to ask something, which he did. He had a friend called Keith who had gone AWOL from the army, and he wanted to ask the glass, will Keith be caught? And the glass said yes, he would. And he said, well, I'd like to know when. And the glass went to number 2. So he said, well, that could be anything. He said, do you mean like 2 hours, 2 weeks, 2 days, 2 years, 2 months? And it went to 2 weeks. So nothing more was said at the time. A couple of days later, Bob had seen his friend Keith and told him what the glass had said. So Keith asked if he could also come round to do the spirit of the glass. So I said, yeah, fine. So by then there were 4 or 5 of us doing the spirit of the glass. And I have to say that the more people there were, it seemed to be whizzing around even faster. And Keith came round and he could see this glass moving. He was a real sceptic. He didn't really think it was going to do anything. And he and Bob started messing about with it. And I did warn them to say that it wasn't something that you messed with. It was a serious thing. It wasn't just a joke. And at the time, Bob was sitting on the arm of the settee. There was nobody sat on the settee with him or near him. We were sat round the table and he was sitting up to the table, but on the arm of the settee. And they started messing around, joking, being rather derogatory about the glass. And I still don't know to this day how it happened or what happened. But the next thing we knew, Bob had flipped up over the settee and landed on the floor behind the settee, between the settee and the window. He wasn't hurt. He got up, and I think that sort of brought the session really more or less to an end. But the end of this, I suppose, little chapter was that Keith was picked up by the army. He was picked up 2 weeks later, hiding behind something in his dad's shed down the garden. My mum at this point did not want us to carry on the spirit of the glass. She was afraid that a bad spirit would be entering her house, and she forbade us to do the spirit of the glass anymore, and told us that if she saw my friends coming in the evening and we carried on, she would take the coffee table out of the lounge so that we wouldn't be able to do it.